When his trusty money man stole $50 million in a huge swindle, Al Pacino went from being a cinematic legend to being destitute all at once. At the age of 84, he supports a 29-year-old girlfriend who is seeing other men by spending $400,000 a year on landscaping for vacant homes, and assuming degrading roles in order to live. During COVID, the Godfather actor even passed out for a few minutes, and medical professionals battled to revive him. This is the startling real-life tale of a Hollywood legend's demise. Alfredo James Pacino was born in East Harlem, New York City, on April 25, 1940. Salvatore Pacino and Rose Pacino, his parents, were both Sicilian. His mother's family was from Corleone, while his father had relocated from San Fratello, Sicily. Later, the moniker would become well-known thanks to The Godfather. However, it was just a part of Pacino's heritage. His parents divorced when he was just 2 years old. Pacino and his mother had to start over in the South Bronx after his father relocated to California to work as a salesman. It was a difficult life. They moved in with his mother's parents, where his grandparents Kate and James Girardi reared him. His grandmother, a strong woman who maintained the family's unity, was in control. Living in the Bronx means dealing with hardships on a daily basis. When money was short, Pacino got into fights, missed school, and even stole meals. At first, he wanted to play baseball, but eventually, movies became his escape. He frequently went to the theater with his mother, and all he wanted to do by the time he was a teenager was perform. He was never good in school. Academics felt more like a roadblock than a way ahead for him while he was a student at Herman Ritter Junior High, and then the High School of Performing Arts. The only subject he passed was English. He left at the age of 17. His mom was heartbroken. She wished for him to have a stable profession that would provide him with security. Their disagreements worsened when he refused. He eventually had to support himself after leaving home. Some of the most difficult years of his life followed. He took on whatever employment that came his way. Mail clerk, busboy, janitor, and messenger. He slept on friends' sofas or the streets on some nights since he had nowhere else to go. He joined the wrong crowd too. He began drinking and smoking when he was 9 years old. He began taking marijuana at the age of 13. 3 of his closest friends lost their lives to heroin misuse, and many more fell into drug addiction. Pacino saw what would occur if he became distracted. He was resolved to avoid a similar fate. He made many unsuccessful attempts to get inside the actor's studio. He didn't give up and went to HB Studio, where he got to know Charlie Lawton. He learned method acting from Lawton, who also became his mentor, a style that demanded intense emotional dedication. Pacino dedicated himself fully to his trade, training day and night. However, money remained an issue. He occasionally used the stage as his bed when he slept at theaters where he practiced. Then catastrophe struck in 1962. At the age of 43, his mother overdosed and died. His grandpa also died less than a year later. The losses were catastrophic. Pacino struggled to remain afloat after falling into a depression. Despite his occasional homelessness and frequent need to borrow money for food, he persisted in pursuing his passion. He was eventually hired by the actor's studio at the age of 23. One of the most significant acting instructors in history, Lee Strasberg, was his instructor. He learned how to bring unadulterated emotion to every character and how to trust oneself from Strasberg. Pacino had settled in, but there was still a long way to go before triumph. His fortunes changed in 1968. He was cast in the off-Broadway play Indian Wants the Bronx, which attracted the interest of both filmmakers and reviewers. In addition to earning him an Obie Award, the act gave him access to previously unattainable opportunities. He had been struggling for years, but now he was getting attention. Pacino famously remarked, "Looking back, I knew I was this vagrant kid, but I only needed to be present when the time arrived." All of his struggles, rejections, and homeless nights had brought him to this point. Al Pacino's little but significant part in Me, Natalie, 1969, marked the beginning of his Hollywood career. Patty Duke as a young woman attempting to make her way through Greenwich Village in the Fred co-directed movie. Although Pacino just made a short cameo, it was his formal cinematic debut. He was still a little-known actor at the time, living in Greenwich Village and learning with Charlie Lawton at the Herbert Berghoff studio. His true love was theater, and he had won a Tony Award for Does the Tiger Wear a Necktie earlier that year. Hollywood was a different world, but his performance in that play demonstrated his intense dedication to acting. Natalie, I wasn't a big hit. However, it earned $1.9 million from US and Canadian box office rentals. It was more significant because it was Pacino's first time in front of a film camera. Although it was a tiny step, it was significant. He got his first major part in The Panic in Needle Park in 1971, 2 years later. This was a far more difficult task. The film, which was directed by Jerry Schatzberg, was a somber and uncompromising examination of heroin addiction in New York City. Pacino portrayed Bobby, a modest businessman whose life goes awry, and his lover Helen, who was portrayed by Kitty Wynn. Based on a James Mills novel, the script was written by Joan Didion and John Gregory Dunn. Nothing was sugar-coated. It was brutally honest in depicting the ugly reality of drug addiction. Bobby was given a raw intensity by Pacino, which made him both likable and extremely disturbed. His performance was hailed by critics as one of the most realistic depictions of addiction ever seen on cinema. Despite not being a box office hit, the movie became a cult favorite. Although Kitty Wynn took up the Cannes Best Actress award, Pacino's performance was the most memorable. Francis Ford Coppola, a filmmaker who would permanently alter his life, took notice of it. Coppola was casting The Godfather at the time, 1972. For Michael Corleone, Paramount sought a well-known performer. Coppola recognized something in Pacino that no one else did, despite their consideration of Robert Redford and Jack Nicholson. Because Pacino was too small and not well-known, the studio pushed for James Caan. Coppola was not going to give up. He thought Pacino has the subdued intensity required to turn Michael from a hesitant outsider into a vicious mafia ruler. Pacino nearly lost the part. Executives were not impressed during the first week of filming. His performance seemed too passive to them. To keep him, Coppola had to battle. The scene where Michael murders McCluskey and Sollozzo at the restaurant followed. It was the pivotal moment. Everything was altered by Pacino's controlled act at that precise time. What Coppola had observed from the beginning was ultimately shown to the studio. The Godfather became an immediate classic upon its March 15, 1972, release. On a budget of $6 million, it earned nearly $250 million globally. Pacino gave a performance that will never be forgotten. Along with Robert Duvall and James Caan, he received an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Even though he didn't win, the nomination demonstrated that he was more than simply a stage performer. He was famous in Hollywood. He made a comeback for The Godfather Part 2 in 1974, 2 years later. This time, the movie featured two stories: the early life of his father Vito Corleone, played by Robert De Niro, and Michael Corleone's ascent to power in the present. No longer was Michael an outsider. He was the family's leader now, and Pacino's performance demonstrated his transformation due to power. He was more aloof, cruel and lonely. It was hailed by critics as one of the best acting performances ever. Best Picture was one of the 6 Academy Awards the movie took home. Art Carney defeated Pacino, who was nominated for Best Actor. He did, however, win the BAFTA for Best Actor, demonstrating that his brilliance was acknowledged on a global scale. In addition to the 2 Godfather movies, Pacino appeared in Sidney Lumet's 1973 picture Serpico, the actual story of NYPD officer Frank Serpico, who revealed corruption inside the department, served as the basis for the film. Pacino was able to display a distinct aspect of his acting in the part. He wasn't portraying a criminal or a mobster. He was portraying a guy against an unjust system. He gave a terrific performance. He had given the part his all, so the annoyance and rage he displayed on screen felt genuine. He was nominated for another Oscar for Best Actor. Then followed another Sidney Lumet picture, Dog Day Afternoon, 1975. In order to finance his partner's gender-affirming surgery, Pacino portrayed Sonny Wartzik, a desperate guy who robs a bank. Pacino gave the part vitality and heart, and the tale was based on actual occurrences. One of the most well-known scenes in the movie was when he walked outside the bank and began yelling "Attica" at the cops, alluding to the Attica prison riots of 1971. It was an entirely spontaneous scene. Pacino received yet another Oscar nomination for the picture, which was another critical and financial triumph. In the early 1970s, Al Pacino was the biggest star in Hollywood. He became one of the most admired performers in the business, because to his roles in Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, and The Godfather. However, things began to go south by the late 1970s. In 1977, he made his first significant error with Bobby Deerfield. Sidney Pollack directed the love drama, which aimed to highlight Pacino's other side. Rather, it became one of his worst mistakes. It was sluggish and uninteresting to audiences. At screenings, some even jeered. The criticism was equally severe. Dreck that should have gone directly to video according to one assessment, which was rather harsh given that home video wasn't even invented yet. In 1980, he still had trouble cruising. The film, which was directed by William Friedkin, follows an undercover investigator as he searched the underground gay leather scene in New York for a serial murderer. It was met with strong opposition from the beginning. During filming, activists disrupted the shoot by blaring air horns, destroying shots with mirrors, and creating so much noise that a large portion of the dialogue had to be re-recorded. The debate further intensified after the film was released. It was viewed as exploitative by many. Audiences were dissatisfied by the story's unresolved ending. It was rejected by critics as unclear and unfocused. Years later, Pacino said that he regretted making the movie and declined to promote it in his memoir Sonny Boy, published in 2024. Despite having a troubled career, he had one of the most significant comebacks in movie history in 1983. Scarface was aggressive, over-the-top and uncharacteristic of his work. Tony Montana's job was extremely risky. The initial plan was for Sidney Lumet to direct, but he quit due to creative disagreements. The film's unadulterated intensity was enhanced by Oliver Stone's struggle with cocaine addiction while writing the screenplay. Critics weren't impressed when it came out. A lot of people thought it was excessively aggressive. The audience's reaction, however, was different. The rise and fall of Tony Montana resonated with people. Despite having a $25 million budget, the movie earned $66 million worldwide. It developed become a cultural phenomena throughout time. "Say hello to my little friend" became a famous line. The movie was embraced by hip-hop performers, and its impact extended well beyond Hollywood. Pacino had once again shown why he was among the greatest. His career appeared to be back on track when yet another catastrophe struck. The American Revolution was the subject of the historical epic Revolution in 1985. Despite spending $28 million to produce, it only brought in $358,000, or $574. Critics detested it. Many people made fun of Pacino's accent. He left Hollywood for 4 years as a result of the film's negative reception. Sea of Love, a strong smash that served as a reminder of his brilliance to listeners, marked his comeback in 1989. But his real return didn't happen until 1992. Martin Brest's film Scent of a Woman changed everything. The narrative centered on Frank Slade, a blind and resentful ex-army commander who develops a relationship with a young pupil. It was a complicated role. Slade had his own unique appeal, but he was also irascible and aggressive. The show culminated in a stirring courtroom statement that astounded the crowd. Pacino had previously received 8 Oscar nominations but had never won. He eventually won the Academy Award for Best Actor this time. Despite having a $31 million budget, the movie earned $134.1 million worldwide and took home many Golden Globes. He became one of the most renowned performers in the world after decades of success. Behind the celebrity, however, he was on the verge of financial ruin that would cost him everything. He lost $50 million in a Ponzi scam in his 70s, spent millions on items he never used, and had to play parts he never would have thought of in order to survive. The person Pacino trusted with his riches was the one who betrayed him the most. Some of the top personalities in Hollywood had their money managed by financial expert Kenneth Starr. Pacino thought his fortune was in capable hands. He delegated all financial authority to Starr. He even gave him permission to sign checks for him. Starr maintained the delusion that everything was all right for years. In actuality, He was exploiting celebrity cash for his personal gain and moving money between accounts as part of a Ponzi scam. Pacino's funds were gone by the time the truth was released in 2010. That following year, Starr was found guilty. Even though he received a 7.5-year prison sentence, Pacino's wealth did not return. The actor then wrote about his realization of what had transpired. He had $50 million one day. He had nothing the next day. His money was depleted by more than only the Ponzi scam. Even his $1 million couldn't keep up with Pacino's spending. He didn't even reside in the mansion he was spending $400,000 on each year for landscaping. Today that would be about $900,000 after accounting for inflation. Additionally, he found that, although only owning 2 automobiles, he was paying for 16. His mobile phone number was 23. How these charges continued to accumulate was beyond him. He had never paid attention to his money. He left the money to others and concentrated on performing. He believed that he was earning enough money to pay for everything. In actuality, taxes, legal bills and agency commissions were eating away at even his enormous earnings, which were $10 million every picture. In addition, he rented rather than purchased houses. He spent millions on lavish vacations and traveled between opulent residences. He spent millions of dollars on a single trip to Europe. He hired a whole room at the Dorchester Hotel in London and took guests on a private Gulfstream flight. Everything appeared to be all right until it wasn't. He had to move quickly since his riches was gone. Fans were shocked when they saw him in that position. He co-starred with Adam Sandler in the comedy Jack and Jill in 2011. The movie made $149 million worldwide and was a commercial success, but reviewers criticized it harshly. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 3% rating. Pacino received 2 Razzie Awards for Worst Supporting Actor and Worst Screen Couple for his outrageous portrayal of himself. Fans questioned why he accepted the part. The solution was straightforward. He had no money. He was in need of cash. And it might be obtained quickly with Jack and Jill. He allegedly received $5 million from the movie. It served as a lifeline. It kept him afloat, but it didn't bring him back his money. The movie created new chances in spite of the criticism. He was solicited by brands for advertisements. He was offered additional jobs by the studio. He began to recover his money gradually. In retrospect, he acknowledged that his finest moment was not with Jack and Jill, but he had no regrets. Adam Sandler, he added, was a pleasure to work with. Al Pacino is the father of 4 children from 3 separate relationships despite never having been married. On October 16, 1989, Julie Marie, his eldest, was born. Before they split up, Pacino and her mother, acting coach Jan Tarrant, had a brief romance. Pacino became a father once more in 2001 after the birth of his twins Anton James and Olivia Rose more than 10 years earlier. From 1997 until 2003, Pacino and their mother, actress Beverly D'Angelo, were together for 6 years. Then in 2023, an unforeseen event occurred. Pacino welcomed his 4th child at the age of 83. On June 15, 2023, his girlfriend, film producer Noor Al-Fallah, gave birth to their son Roman. Pacino is 54 years older than Al-Fallah. As soon as their romance started in April 2022, people started talking about it. Pacino has been connected to a number of well-known women throughout the years, including Diane Keaton, his co-star in Godfather. After The Godfather Part 3, their romance ended after years of intermittent contact. Pacino later spent 10 years with Argentine actress Lucila Polak, and Keaton once declared her love for him, calling him the most amusing man. Prior to it, he was romantically involved with Marta Keller and Tuesday Weld, among others. Pacino never thought marriage was a good match for his life, even with these relationships. It just didn't feel right for him, he once stated. Fatherhood, however, was different. Even if it was difficult to balance it with his profession, he always took satisfaction in being a parent. He acknowledged that he hadn't always given his twins the attention they needed as they grew up in his biography, Sonny Boy. There have been times in Al Pacino's life that seem like they belong in one of his films. Some of them altered him permanently, while others were horrifying. They all reveal facets of his life that are rarely seen by others. When The Godfather made him a household figure in the 1970s, something happened that may have had a very different outcome. One evening, after spending hours drinking with Gene Hackman's brother Richard Hackman, Pacino became too inebriated to drive himself home. A fan, a lady, offered to drive him. He didn't hesitate in his condition. He entered. Nothing appeared odd at first. Then he became aware that they were not going in the proper direction. Where were they heading? He inquired. He was chilled by her remark. I am abducting you. Alcohol clouded his judgment, but instinct won out. She continued to drive even after he told her he was getting out. Jumping was the only way out. He was prepared. Perhaps she noticed the fear in his eyes. Perhaps she understood that he would not be easily influenced. She abruptly gave up, regardless of the cause. She drove him home after turning around rather than bringing him somewhere else. Pacino said that his upbringing in the South Bronx had equipped him for circumstances such as these in his book, Sonny Boy, published years later. He had mastered survival skills early on. Those instincts rescued him that night. In 2020, over 50 years later, he had to deal with something much more perilous. The COVID-19 virus struck Pacino hard when he became one of the numerous people who fell ill. Dehydration, fever, and then nothing. He passed out. His heart stopped beating. He vanished for a few shuddering minutes. The paramedics showed there with full protective gear. 2 physicians and 6 of them labored to bring him back. He was surrounded by people wearing medical equipment from head to toe when he eventually woke up. Nothing seemed more bizarre than what he had just gone through. He later recalled, even if they appeared to have walked out of a science fiction film. Survivors of such near misses frequently describe sensing a presence or witnessing a brilliant light. None of that affected Pacino. It was an emptiness, he said. You're present, you're not, even your memories are gone. Nothing is yours. He was altered by the encounter. It caused him to reconsider life, death, and the afterlife. He vowed to take better care of himself and spend more time with his son Roman when he recovered. But he knows that moment will always be a part of him, regardless of how much time goes by. Pacino was fighting something that wouldn't let him sleep long before any of his near-death encounters. He had spent the most of his life with chronic sleeplessness. He had trouble falling asleep for decades. He couldn't stop thinking. He would sometimes lie awake for hours on end, engrossed in ideas that would not go away. On other evenings, fatigue prevailed. But sleep never came easily, no matter how exhausted he was. By the time he rose to fame, his everyday life was being negatively impacted by his lack of sleep. He was exhausted during the day since he frequently remained up until sunrise. The consequences accumulated over time. Mood fluctuations, errors in memory, and times when fatigue obscured reality. At his lowest, he even acknowledged having hallucinations. He portrayed a detective with acute sleep deprivation in Christopher Nolan's psychological thriller, Insomnia, in 2002. It was more than simply acting for him. He was well aware of what it was like to spend endless evenings lying awake and letting his thoughts wander. Financial difficulties only made matters worse. He once lost millions due to a dishonest accountant. His restless evenings took on a new dimension due to the financial strain. The struggle never truly stopped, even after he learned coping mechanisms. He had come to terms with insomnia, but it was still one of the most difficult things he had ever had to deal with, an unseen battle that no one could see. One of Hollywood's most admired performers for many years has been Al Pacino. However, celebrity also brings scrutiny. Additionally, there has been criticism about some of his professional decisions and personal connections. His role in the 1980 thriller Cruising, which swiftly became a focal point for demonstrations, was one of the most talked about events of his career. On paper, the William Friedkin-directed movie, which featured Pacino as an undercover cop breaking into New York City's homosexual club scene to apprehend a serial murderer, had all the makings of an exciting crime thriller. It actually caused a firestorm. LGBTQ+ campaigners didn't wait for its publication to speak out because they were afraid it would reinforce negative stereotypes. During production, protests broke out, with protesters arriving at the shooting sites virtually every day. They made loud sounds to interrupt takes, waved placards, and chanted to express their determination not to allow this film to negatively portray their town. The reaction to Cruiser's release in cinemas was equally strong. It was deemed predatory by critics. Divergent opinions were expressed by the audience, with many believing that it sensationalized rather than represented the LGBTQ+ community. Later on, even Pacino said that he regretted doing the movie. He disclosed that he anonymously gave his whole movie payment to charity in his biography, Sonny Boy. He had hoped to push himself as an actor after seeing how it worked out, but instead, he was at the heart of a controversy that never really went away. Years later, Pacino's private life was the subject of yet another contentious debate. From the beginning, there were questions about his connection with Noor Al-Fallah, a lady who was 54 years younger than him. In June 2023, they had a son, Roman Al-Fallah Pacino. However, their love engagement ended in October 2024. She was still in his life, despite that. Indeed, she continued to feel a strong bond with him, and not only because of their kid. Al-Fallah had previously dated Clint Eastwood and Mick Jagger, two older affluent men. This sparked conjecture regarding her intentions. Pacino's friends were concerned that she could be taking advantage of him. Their worries weren't wholly unwarranted. According to court documents, Pacino was mandated to pay $110,000 up front, $30,000 per month in child support, and other costs such as $13,000 for a night nurse. In addition, he was required to pay $15,000 a year into their son's college fund. Al-Fallah apparently received funding from Pacino to maintain his opulent lifestyle even after the split. She was seen dating other well-known men in the meantime, such as comedian Bill Maher. Although Pacino apparently felt deceived by this, he continued to assist her financially. He was regarded as passionately smitten by his friends, who even conjectured that he may give her a sizable amount of his riches. This appeared to some to be an instance of love impairing judgment. For others, it served as a warning about power disparities in interpersonal interactions. Despite the cautions and conjecture, Pacino's commitment to Al-Fallah kept people talking, regardless of the facts. Al Pacino was still generating news at this point in his life, regardless of whether he was being taken advantage of or he was just choosing to help his child's mother.